After the general election of 1969, Malaysian political landscapes changed almost instantly. The Alliance Party won the election with a significantly reduced number of seats and popular votes. The result represents the voters resentful to swing their votes to the opposition. The poor performance of the Alliance Party coalition, including UMNO, is shown through the significant reduction of the majority among the candidates. UMNO and Alliance Party strongmen, including the Tunku himself, were not spared by the voters' sentiments. He won the seat with a substantially reduced in the majority. Some federal ministers lost their seats, including UMNO Secretary General Senu Abdul Rahman, who was also the Minister of Information and Broadcasting. The 1969 general election had left a tragic event, the May 13 racial riots. The incident took place in the heart of the Kuala Lumpur, involving the racial bloody clashes between the group of angry Malays and the Chinese supporters of the opposition party. Official reports recorded a death toll of 196, but other sources suggested hundreds more. The aftermath of the event severely affected the country's administration. The parliament was suspended and the nationwide state of emergency or darurat was declared. A caretaker government known as the National Operations Council or Majlis Gerakan Negara, Mageran, was established to take over the country's administration. The event also led the first Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman Putra, to step down and succeeded by Tun Abdul Razak. Subsequently, a new national policy, the New Economic Policy or Dasar Ekonomi Baru (DEB), was introduced to tackle the issues of economic inequality among multiracial society. As for Dr. Mahathir, the 1969 general election left him with a bitter experience. He lost his seat to past candidate Haji Yusuf Rawah. He could not imagine seeing his long dream to become a leader vanish in the thin air. The defeat shook his pride and ripped the emotion. His swift response explained his emotional pain. He wrote in a doctor in the house, "Losing my parliamentary seat hurt terribly, and on the ride home with Hasma, I could not help shedding tears. The taste of defeat was unfamiliar and it was painful." But Dr. Mahathir is a rational man with a vision larger than his defeat. People always say that success leads you to the party, but failure leads you to ponder. This is what Dr. Mahathir later did. The defeat is the greatest motivator. The lesson he learned had forever changed his life. For Dr. Mahathir, mourning and grief will not bring back his parliamentary seat and change his destiny. He realized this fateful event of May 13 would change the future direction of his political leadership. He could surrender to fate or do something to decide on his future. Although he had lost the seat in the election, he is still a member of UMNO Supreme Council. There is still hope for him to walk through the political leadership to the top. The question is, how? While the nation was mourning on the May 13 racial riots, Dr. Mahathir took this fateful event as a problem-based lesson. The event is a problem trigger and scenario for him to initiate the problem-based leadership learning. Among the most obvious scenario he observed is the aftermath of the 1969 general election that resulted in the fateful racial riots. Long before the election campaign, there were already signs of instability in the multiracial relation. Unfortunately, the country's leader, including the Tunku, had constantly in the denial state. On many occasions, Dr. Mahathir had attempted to alert him but was ignored. The Tunku at that time was in the state of delusion, adoring his moment of the happiest prime minister in the world. He failed to see the real problem as well as the symptoms triggered in the ground. He had even neglected efforts to upgrade the living standard of the Malays. Majority of the Malays are poor, uneducated, backward and politically threatened. On the other hand, the Tunku favoured Chinese demands and giving more priorities to them, socially and economically. On the Chinese side, many of them could not see the importance of serving the country. They shied away from high-risk and non-commercial jobs such as the armed forces and the police. They prefer business rather than serving the government. The Malays felt discriminated. While they were protecting the country and risking their lives in security forces, the Chinese were making money and becoming richer and richer. The Chinese also felt discriminated and blamed the government's double standard policies, favoring the Malay rights more than others. They argued that the Chinese and other non-Malays were treated as second-class citizens. Their disputes, according to Dr. Mahathir, were instigated by the opposition parties. The Chinese and Indians had long before independence in 1957 accepted the social contract agreed between them. The Malays agreed to grant citizenship to more than 1 million Chinese and Indians in return for the preservation of their fundamental rights in the constitution. The formation of Malaysia in 1963 changed the way Chinese looking at the social contract. Lee Kuan Yew and his party, PAP from Singapore, began to challenge the contract and fought for social equality among the citizens. After the separation from Malaysia in 1965, PAP left its legacy to DAP. Before the 1969 general election, DAP began to promote the Malaysia concept and called for the abolishment of the social contract. Many Chinese impressed with the DAP campaigns and began to question the Malay rights. On the Malay side, they were failed to be observant and thoughtful. They were so proud of the Ketuanan Melayu, the Malay lordship or superiority, a slogan, and argued their case emotionally and inadequately considering the status of the Malay language. They arrogantly protect their language and deny the importance of other languages such as Mandarin and Tamil for the Malaysians. For all the wrong reasons, according to Dr. Mahathir, the Malays take pride in the so-called Malay superiority. In summary, there are at least 5 important points addressed by Dr. Mahathir in his response to the May 13 racial riots. First, 1. The unwise decision by the government to allow the celebration by supporters of the opposition parties without considering the emerging of the racial tensions. 2. Failures of leadership. Leaders restrained themselves inside the comfort zone, ignored the symptoms of racial instability, and contracted with the denial syndrome. 3. Dissatisfaction among the Malays who feel discriminated by the Chinese, who were seen as unwilling to serve and protect the country with their sweats and tears. 4. The role of Singapore's PAP and DAP in instigating the Chinese dissatisfaction over the Malays' indigenous status quo. And 5. The Malays' unthoughtful and emotional response over their status and language. The National Operation Council or Majlis Gerakan Negara in their reports in 1969 and 1974 stated 4 precursors to the May 13 riots. 1. The political interference of the Malay constitutional rights. 2. Racism and provocative claims outspread during the election campaigns. 3. The role of Malayan Communist Party in spreading racial hatred and subversive elements. And 4. The mistrust among the Malays and Chinese. Tunku Abdul Rahman, who was at the center stage of the event, according to Dr. Mahathir, responded with his defensive statement, blaming others except himself. The chief among them was the Malayan Communist Party, who, according to the Tunku, was planning to topple the government by intimidating the Chinese to withdraw their support towards the Alliance Party. In many ways, Dr. Mahathir's data and information on the riots are in line with the media reports. He had in his sources the media reports, both from the local and foreign newspapers. Besides, he had also conducted surveys and sharing sessions with other politicians soon after the event. However, his observation on the data and information goes beyond the perspectives discussed by the media as well as the Tunku. His final analysis pointed towards the Tunku's leadership as the main contributing factor. May 13, 1969 racial riots tragedy should be taken seriously as one of the main historical lessons for leaders of a multiracial country such as Malaysia. They should learn how to approach this highly sensitive and delicate issue from a correct perspective. As a transforming leader, one should be able to learn through this issue from an intellectual perspective, not to play the blame game and to fish in troubled waters. Dr. Mahathir had taken this event seriously, but he finally blamed Tunku Abdul Rahman for this unfortunate event. The question here, Did Dr. Mahathir was playing a blame game and fishing in troubled waters so he could benefit from the May 13, 1969 racial riots? If that is so, then we could not say that he represents a good transforming leader. Instead, he is no better than many other transactional leaders who are looking for the opportunities to gain by blaming others without any good reason and proper investigation. To get a better understanding of this question, let us explore further how Dr. Mahathir had approached this May 13, 1969 racial riots event in the next discussion.